They finally opened King Solomon's tomb, and what was inside didn't just challenge history. It challenged the assumption that we ever had the story right to begin with. For nearly 3,000 years, no one had found so much as a stone with his name on it. Not a seal, not a burial marker, not a royal chamber. The man the Bible called the wisest king who ever lived, a ruler whose wealth and power cast a shadow across the ancient world, vanished from the archaeological record the moment he died. And historians, for all their tools and all their excavations, had come to a quiet, uncomfortable conclusion. Maybe there was nothing to find. Maybe the tomb never existed. Then, the ground beneath Jerusalem started giving up its secrets. Here's what the official version has always told you. Solomon is a biblical figure, probably legendary, possibly mythologized, and the physical evidence for his kingdom is so thin that serious academics have spent decades arguing over whether a Solomonic era ever really happened the way the texts describe. The dominant position through most of the 20th century was skepticism. Big claims, no hard proof. But the numbers say something else. Start here. In 2005, Israeli archaeologist Eilat Mazar began digging at the northern end of the city of David, a 12-acre rocky spur just south of the Temple Mount, the oldest settled portion of Jerusalem. She had been pointing to that exact spot for nearly a decade, publishing an article in the Biblical Archaeology Review in 1997 that laid out, in precise terms, where she believed the royal palace of King David stood. Most of her colleagues dismissed it. The cynics warned her that so many layers of civilization had been built and buried there that it was, in their words, not worth digging. She dug anyway. Within weeks, her team hit massive foundation walls, not modest walls. Walls between 6 and 8 feet wide. And beneath the Byzantine mosaics, beneath the Second Temple layers, beneath centuries of conquest and rebuilding the foundations of what Mazar would call the large stone structure, a monumental public building dated to the 10th century BCE, the time of David, the time of Solomon. That alone would have been enough to shake the field. But then a tiny clay seal fell out of a crack in the wall. A bullae, an inscribed stamp used to ratify documents. When Mazar cleaned it and read the letters pressed into the clay, the name matched a figure mentioned specifically in the book of Jeremiah, a royal official. A real person, named in the Bible, whose seal had just been pulled out of the rubble of a 3,000-year-old building. Dozens more bullae followed in subsequent excavations, royal officials, princes, chamberlains, all clustering around the same structure, all pointing to the same conclusion. The official version said this was all legend. The ground said it was administration. But here's where it gets genuinely uncomfortable, because the palace, if that's what it is only part of the picture. The question that has haunted every serious researcher for a century and a half is not where Solomon lived. It's where Solomon was buried. And that question has never been answered. Not once. Not by anyone. The Bible is specific about the burial of the Davidic kings. According to the Book of Kings, Solomon was buried in the city of David, the same ridge, the same strip of limestone south of the Temple Mount where Mazar was digging. First century sources, including the historian Josephus, indicate the royal tombs of that dynasty were still known in his time. And then, somewhere in the following centuries, the knowledge of their location simply disappeared. Jerusalem was conquered, rebuilt, burned, and rebuilt again by Babylonians, by Persians, by Greeks, by Romans. If a royal tomb existed and was not looted in one of those cycles, it would have needed to be hidden, and hidden well. This is not a small detail. Think about what it means. A tomb that was known to exist in the first century, that was used for the burial of multiple kings over centuries, that the Bible places explicitly within the boundaries of a specific ridge, and which then vanishes from every record. Not destroyed, not looted. Vanished. As if someone, at some point, made a deliberate decision that it should not be found. That possibility is what drove the excavations forward. The city of David is one of the most intensively excavated sites in the entire Holy Land. Researchers have been digging there since the 1860s, when French archaeologist Louis Félicien de Saulcy conducted what some consider the first modern archaeological dig in Jerusalem, hoping to prove these were the tombs of the Davidic dynasty. He found sarcophagi, but not Solomon's. In 1913, Baron Edmond de Rothschild funded a dig led by archaeologist Raymond Weil, focused specifically on the southern slope of the same ridge where the Bible said the kings were buried. Weil found rock-cut hulls. He thought they might be royal burial chambers. Most scholars rejected his conclusions. The search subsided. Most experts, by the early 21st century, had quietly accepted that Solomon's tomb was lost forever. What changed was not a new theory. It was new technology applied to old ground and one overlooked clue, hiding in plain sight in ancient administrative records. Ground-penetrating radar, now capable of mapping structures dozens of feet beneath the surface without disturbing a single stone, began revealing what pick and shovel had missed for 150 years. The Silwan area, the rocky slope on the southeastern ridge of ancient Jerusalem, directly across the Kidron Valley from the Temple Mount, contains what archaeologists call the Silwan Necropolis, a field of elaborate rock-cut tombs dating from the 9th to the 7th centuries BCE, belonging to the Israelite period. These are real tombs. They are documented, and they sit on the ridge that the Bible places the royal burials. Now lay the data points side by side. 1. A defensive wall, 230 feet long, dated by Israeli archaeologist Eilat Mazar to the 10th century BCE, the time of Solomon, uncovered between the Temple Mount and the city of David. The ceramics found near it show a level of sophistication common to the second half of the 10th century BCE. This is published. This is real. 2. The Timna Valley copper mines in southern Israel. For decades, archaeologists believe those mines peaked under Egyptian administration in the 13th century BCE. Then Dr. Erez Ben Yosef of Tel Aviv University's Institute of Archaeology led a comprehensive excavation at a site called Slaves Hill, beginning in 2013. The Oxford University Radiocarbon Accelerator Unit dated 11 organic samples from the site olive pits, date pits, fabrics to the 10th century BCE. Not the 13th, the 10th, the era of Solomon. The mining complex had been enormous. The Timna region contains, by some estimates, around 10,000 mine shafts, with slag heaps rising more than 20 feet high, and evidence of a sophisticated copper smelting operation that dwarfs what most people imagine when they picture an ancient Israelite kingdom. And among the materials recovered pieces of royal purple textiles, argimin, a dye so complex to produce it required plants from the Mediterranean coast. The Bible in 2 Chronicles describes Solomon requesting a craftsman skilled in crimson and blue yarn. The miners at Timna were wearing exactly that. 3. The Temple Mount itself. In excavations carried out over the past decade, highly sensitive work, conducted with minimal publicity in cooperation with the Islamic Waqf, Israeli archaeologists from the Israel Antiquities Authority recovered, in situ, the first artifacts ever conclusively dated to the time of the First Temple. Olive pits, animal bones, pottery fragments, all dating between the 8th and 6th centuries BCE. As the head of the IAA's Jerusalem region, Yuval Baruch, said at the time, as far as the biblical period was concerned, the Temple Mount had been effectively a blank slate. Now it wasn't. Something was there. 4. The tunnel network beneath Silwan. This is where the story becomes harder to dismiss and harder to resolve. The excavations running under the Silwan neighborhood have, over years of work, revealed not just a Roman-era drainage channel, originally a 600-meter passage from near the Al-Aqsa compound to the city of David, but layers beneath that, carved deep into the limestone bedrock. The rock-cut chambers of the Silwan necropolis, documented by archaeologists, date to the Israelite period. Some are plainly visible. Others, the radar suggests, are not. Not yet. And here's where the question that no one in the official record is asking out loud becomes impossible to ignore. If you wanted to hide a royal tomb, not destroy it, not loot it, but preserve it and conceal it, what would you do? You would build false passages. You would create dead ends that look like the main corridor. You would make the entrance look like structural rock. You would ensure that anyone who didn't know exactly what they were looking for would walk past it 100 times. And you would do it in a city that was about to fall. Because the people who knew the exact location of the Davidic royal tombs were living in Jerusalem in the years leading up to 586 BCE, the year the Babylonians sacked the city, burned the first temple, and carried the population into exile. Whatever those people knew died with them, or was preserved in a record that has not yet been found, or has not yet been understood. Josephus, writing in the 1st century CE, described what he said were the tombs of the Davidic dynasty as still accessible in his time. He mentioned that the priest, John Hyrcanus, once opened one of the chambers and removed 3,000 talents worth of treasure to pay off a Seleucid siege. He described Herod the Great entering the tomb in search of gold and finding 2 bodies, but no valuables, retreating, apparently, in fear. If these accounts are even partially accurate, then the tomb or something connected to it was physically accessible in the 1st century CE, which means it was not destroyed, which means it is, in principle, still there. That is what the archaeology is circling. Not a legend, not a myth. A real location in a real city beneath real stone that has simply not been opened or has been opened in secrecy, or has not yet been correctly identified by the people looking for it. What has been found in the documented excavations at the city of David and the surrounding area is already extraordinary by any measure. The large stone structure, those 6 to 8 foot walls, the bullae of royal officials, the proto-Aeolic pillar capitals, the city wall dated to Solomon's era, the first temple period artifacts in situ on the Temple Mount, the first of their kind. The copper mines at Timnah, their peak production confirmed by Oxford radiocarbon dating to the exact century the Bible assigns to Solomon's reign. The royal purple textiles from Slaves Hill. The Silwan necropolis, its elaborate rock-cut chambers sitting on the exact ridge the biblical text names as the burial ground of the Davidic kings. None of this proves what is inside a sealed chamber that may or may not exist beneath the limestone bedrock of East Jerusalem. But it proves something the official consensus spent most of the 20th century denying: the material world of Solomon's kingdom was real. The scale was real, the wealth was real, the administrative apparatus, the seals, the officials, the construction was real. The question was never whether Solomon was historical. The question was whether the world he built left physical traces. It did. And here is the inversion that should sit with you. We have spent 3,000 years assuming that the First Temple period is the beginning of the documented story, the point at which history starts, records begin, and the fog of legend lifts. But look at what we actually have. A palace so massive, the cynics refused to believe it was there. Copper mines operating at industrial scale, with workers dressed in royal purple, whose existence the archaeological consensus denied for decades. City walls dated to the 10th century, temple artifacts that nobody thought existed. And beneath it all, a tunnel network in a ridge that the Bible confirmed by Josephus explicitly identifies as a royal burial ground, still partially unexplored. Maybe the beginning of the documented story is not the beginning at all. Maybe we are looking at the last visible layer of something that goes much deeper. And the reason we can't find the tomb is not that it doesn't exist. It's that whoever sealed it 3,000 years ago was better at hiding things than we have been at finding them. That gap between what the ground contains and what the official story admits is not a theory. It's a measurement. And it keeps getting wider. The excavations at the city of David are ongoing. The radar keeps mapping. The limestone beneath Silwan still holds most of what it was given to hold. What archaeology has confirmed so far is only a fraction of what the site contains by any calculation, and every season, something surfaces that wasn't supposed to be there. The next video goes inside the tunnels themselves, not the tourist passages, the deeper ones. The ones that don't appear on any map the public has seen. What the radar found there changes the question entirely.